Joining us now is Dr. Rupert Read, who's an Extinction Rebellion spokesperson. Welcome, Dr. Read.
Hello, Maajid.
How do you respond to what I've just said?
Well, we agree about much. I think much of your analysis is absolutely right. In particular, I want to emphasize that Extinction Rebellion is beyond party politics and beyond ideology. And that has been in our DNA since the beginning, and it's been very clear in everything I've said about the movement, and that has not changed in the least. Now, if we come for a second to the SWP, because this is really a sideshow, the SWP, I agree with your analysis, again, speaking for myself here, not really speaking for XR, but speaking for myself, I would regard the SWP as a bunch of parasites and hangers-on.
Yes.
What I've been saying in the recent media, which I think you're aware of, and which has been unfortunately distorted by some, is that the SWP have been turning up to a few XR events and so on, but they are getting absolutely nowhere. So there is no comparison whatsoever with Stop the War. Stop the War was basically, and Stop the War did a lot of good stuff, but Stop the War was set up as essentially an SWP front. There is no comparison between that and Extinction Rebellion. We are a very broad-based organisation. We are not at all subject to a socialist ideology or anything like that. So I'd like to put your worries at rest on that score. Ian Dale spoke about this a little while ago on LBC, and I think he's conceded now that his earlier comments on Ma on this were a misrepresentation. This is not a problem that we have. This alleged problem of infiltration just isn't.
Could you
in terms of the action that took place in terms of the action that took place at the Murdoch presses, that action has absolutely overwhelming support within Extinction Rebellion. Of course, it's very controversial. We always knew it was going to be controversial, but it's not at all a matter of, there are these left-wing people in Extinction Rebellion who want to target Murdoch and everybody else doesn't.
Before we get to the newspapers, I'd like to ask you about the protest before that, and then because I concede that the newspaper protest isn't as alarming to me as the ones that occurred prior to that. Could you explain to us what happened at Canning Town and what's happening with drones over airports, and then we can move to the newspapers?
Sure, okay, we can get to those, sure. Yeah. So last year, there were a tiny number of activists who attempted to disrupt Heathrow via drones. They were not part of Extinction Rebellion, and Extinction Rebellion did not support their actions.
Were they claiming to be part of XR?
No, they didn't. Not when they were doing the actions. They were called Heathrow Paws.
Right.
On the Canning Town thing, there were a tiny number of activists who disrupted public transport at Canning Town. They were part of Extinction Rebellion. But the overwhelming majority of us in Extinction Rebellion did not support their actions. And it's been widely recognised, I think, since that action was a mistake and will not happen again. Yeah. The Murdoch thing is completely different. The overwhelming majority of us in Extinction Rebellion are behind what happened yesterday. So why is that? Let me now seek to explain.
Yes, please do. Please do.
There are 5 billionaires who run the press in this country, and they have systematically distorted and suppressed coverage of this issue and systematically demonized climate migrants along the way. What we did yesterday was for one day, just one day, to interrupt the regular process of their papers full of often of deceptions and miscommunications, to interrupt the progress of their papers around the nation. Of course, we could still look at what they did online and so on and so forth. Some people are saying, you're censoring freedom of speech and so on. This was a tiny act of disruption to try to forestall the far, far greater disruption that is coming to our lives if we do not rein in the climate and ecological emergency. And the number one obstacle to real action on the climate and ecological emergency, it's the press. It's the right-wing press. It's those same billionaires, especially, of course, Murdoch, who is notoriously a climate change denier, who has belittled the fires in Australia, for example, earlier this year. And we were making the point very powerfully, and it's forced a national conversation on this, which I think is all to the good. We're making the point very powerfully, for God's sake, for our children's sake, please start telling the truth on the climate and ecological emergency. Otherwise, the future is going to be so horrifically disrupted for all of us that stopping a few papers for a day is, it literally doesn't even begin to bear comparison with it.